everyone, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a marine biologist and it's my job to share about the weirdest and most wonderful sea life that you can find in our oceans. And welcome to part 3, where I'm trying to make a miniature theatre to put on a science show at a very exciting location in London called the RI Lecture Theatre, where literal elements were announced, and I am bringing this beautiful thing with me. So for those of you who are watching, there's a whole series of this going on because this is like no small feat. In all fairness, it is a small feat because it's a tiny theatre. Following along, there is from the start where we painted the front of this. I think the second video is trying to paint the set. Now I haven't finished the set yet, so you'll know before I do how amazing hopefully this looks. But today's video is something very exciting. We are jumping in and starting to do the puppets, and I'm doing this before finishing off the sets because just the way that my timetable works, I'm making them out of clay and they need time to dry so that I can then go and paint them. So I'm so excited. Let's chat about the plan to make puppets and if I know anything about making puppets. A bit more about what I'm trying to do with this story, to do with the show. I am deliberately, I'm sorry everyone, teasing that out as we go because I kind of want the final thing to be a little bit of a surprise. So, and you will get to see the actual finished video of it, whether that's in the practice and then again on like the live performance, you will see the finished product. So what I'm envisioning with this wonderful world, and hopefully you will have seen that from the sets, even though I've not done them yet, is I want it to be a celebration, not just of like the science of it, but also the art. Like I want you to feel like you've jumped into an illustrated marine world. And so when I was thinking about puppets and things, I didn't want to go down the route of like felt, which I've done before for some of my costumes, or I didn't just want to stick, and I didn't really just want to stick to like just painted puppets, because I thought I could have like the main character of this sort of story be a watercolour piece of paper that is on a stick that I move around. I wanted the main part of it. I think there will be bits of puppets that are just painted for time and ease, and I've only got 3 minutes to tell this story, so I have to think about the logistics of that. But I really wanted the main character of the story to be a spectacle, show something that's exciting, and there's also part of the story where there is sort of a physical element to it. And the reason I wanted a puppet is that, you know, you can interact with puppets, and the choice of the story is very sentimental to me. It is a celebration of kind of the moments in your life that really have an impact on you and just that connection with nature. And so what I'm trying to make as a puppet is based on that, and it is not based on what I would make if someone said to you, make a puppet out of a sea life puppet, because it's not easy. So the plan for today is to make a clay puppet crab. Crab. Yes, those decapod creatures, dec being the 10-part limbed thing, those creatures with 10 limbs and many parts and claws and a shell and details. That is what I'm making. Have I ever done clay puppets before? No. Have I ever done puppets before? No. Have I ever really made anything out of clay before? Not unless you count what I did at school many, many years ago. Do I have a lot of time to perfect this art? Nope. So, I'm super excited to get on board and try this puppet thing. Look, I have worn a literal pillowcase to a science show and told people it's a flatfish. I am less fussed by how this comes out, but I would love it to kind of come out really nice. But what I have made before is this. I made this years and years and years ago on a YouTube video when I got one of those like 3D kind of printed pens. This took absolutely ages to make because those things were so slow then. and this is a devil crab. We're going to be doing a different species today. We're going to do a common shore crab. But it's actually, thinking about it, it's quite a good thing to have a look at and to check out, because I want to be able to do something about this size. This will fit really well on the stage, and it's sort of like the right amount, I think, sort of for a puppet. And I've got a load of different things to try. We have our air dry clay, so that we can make them. I have a ton of tools. Like a ton, like way too many tools in there. We have these little hooks for like hooking things on, wire, and like fishing line. And I've never made a puppet that you hang off of string before, but we're going to try and make it so that it does that. If you're more interested about all of the different bits that I've got, I do have an art haul video you can go and check out for all of that sort of stuff. But that's the challenge that we're going to be starting today, is to figure out and work out in my head, how exactly do I turn a pieces of clay and wire into quite a complicated 3D sort of creature, where ideally I will be able to move the kind of claws and the legs and bring this, not only is this sort of like stationary sort of, you know, this sort of size, but something that I can bring to life through the art of puppetry, which again I have no experience doing. So I think there's nothing more to say really than to let's give this a go. So I grabbed a piece of paper and started to draw out the size of the crab. I wanted the crab to be the size of me holding it, which is going to be important for the story, but also sort of would fit in the theatre, and would also mean that if I'm making this crab puppet, I could maybe go away and like use it in other things to share about like how you would hold a crab. Actually, I have my most popular video on YouTube is how to hold a crab video, if you want to go and check that out. So maybe I wouldn't need to be able to hold it for that, but I thought it was also a good way to sort of remind myself what I needed to make sure I included when I made the clay, get the spacing out, and hopefully get the shapes right. And I moved on then to using tin foil. Now this, I'd watched my training for this was a few YouTube videos on sort of making puppets, and with the air dry clay you wanted the least amount of air dry clay that was sort of structurally sound, otherwise it was just going to take weeks and weeks to dry. So making the shape out of tinfoil was a really cool way of sort of making the shape of that. I will say that the crab came out bigger than I'd drawn it. I think just a mix of like using the paper as a guide was good. It didn't get too big, but having that and then adding the tinfoil and then adding the clay, just a note to people, I would make it when you're making it like smaller, or make your paper guides slightly smaller, because there was just sort of no way of sticking exactly to it once I'd gotten like all the sort of clay around it. You can't really like make it smaller because you're just adding stuff to it all the time. Tinfoil crab complete, because crab, right? You know what? I am not very I'm not someone who can think in their head about like space and like an IKEA document to me is mind-boggling. Like you could show me the picture, you could show me what happened, until I physically get it in my hands. Even if I'm thinking in my head, like I can see maybe how this would go together, like it doesn't really, it just doesn't work. Thinking about this crab puppet for so long and thinking about how do you control each bit and how do the wires mesh up, and honestly I can't come up with the answers. So sitting down and getting tinfoil and be like, okay, I can like see the size of it, and then as I'm drawing it out and realizing different bits, like I really feel like I'm a very hands-on, fake it till you make it sort of thing. Like I don't know how this puppet is going to turn out, but the only way I can ever work out how to do it is just to get in there. And so I'm so excited. No, to play. I've never used air dry clay before. I'm imagining that we just open it up and have a play. I'm so excited. It feels really cold, quite warm. Okay, time to clay. Time to play. That poem would work better written down. yay. And then next up it was the clay. Honestly, this was so fun. You will be seeing loads more clay from me on this channel because I just enjoyed this so much. There's something so tactile about it, so awesome about just creating something that there was nothing there. It's like with paper and then tinfoil and then becomes this like incredible shape of thing, and like if you mess up you can just keep re-wiggling it. I found it so fun to do. I also love that, like art, the reason I do a lot of the art is to try and like learn and connect with the creatures even more. There's a real tendency, and it's so easy, and even when you're drawing you sort of forget about it, that you like look at a creature and you think it's really cool, and then you start to think of all these other things, but you don't really like look at the anatomy and the shape, and just having an extra sort of appreciation of it through art, and even more so I think through sculpture then, because you're really having to think about the whole animal completely, all parts of it, because you're having to make it. And what an awesome creature to spend the time sort of admiring. I have always loved the shape of crabs. I've always loved crabs in general, and the common shore crab is I'm so like in love with them because they were the crabs that I grew up with as a kid, which is sort of feature within the story of this. But the shape of them and their little hooks on their shell, and that is just iconic. I think you could show that shape, that shell shape, and I really wanted to get it right in the sculpture, because I think if you showed that to people you would see that it was a crab, you know, like straight away, even regardless of however I painted it or whatever it was, just getting that shape, that iconic crab shell. And then when we get to the claws, getting those right too was so important to me. When getting into the details of the underside of the crab, this definitely was sort of reduced a bit just because it's actually quite complicated. There's lots of crustacean-y anatomy going on around there, lots of joints of the legs and things. But one thing I really wanted to make clear so that I could use it as a bit of an educational thing was the sex of the crab. So you can tell the difference between a male and female crab by the sort of width of their abdomen and the shape of it. Females tend to be wider and more rounded, and males are much sort of thinner and pointed. So I made that a roughly more rounder shape. So I'm gonna hopefully be able to go and show how people can tell the differences between a male and a female crab. It wasn't the cleanest method. I just sort of like made lines and drew lines out and then tried to smooth it round, but I think it works really well with the paints later on, and it's going to be the point of the puppet that isn't so well looked at, so I was sort of less fussed. And then I started to go and get into sort of doing the many legs, which I will talk about a bit more because it's more interesting to talk about it when there's painting going on. But I wanted to share that I used this wire. It was a craft wire, but I think it was more for jewellery, and this is one of the things I really would change. So I wanted to include this in here so that you can sort of learn from my mistakes. I think I would have had a stronger wire for starters, because the point of the wire being in there was so that I could like connect some of the legs together and keep them sort of connected. You can see me wrapping the wire around the tinfoil and then having it stick out either side, because the point of the wire I realised is that I wanted a way to make sure that we can sort of connect the legs together. When I have all these hooks which I'm using as well, but this was sort of the stability connecting part of it, and I didn't use thick enough wire, because since this, and I've only used the puppet a couple of times, the wire keeps snapping, and where it's gotten too short I've had to sort of super glue wire into it, which is not as strong, and it makes it unusable. And I really don't want to have to go and try and make a new clay part of the puppet that then matches with the paint, because I think it's going to be difficult to colour match and all that. So I think having a much stronger wire to give it a bit more durability is really important. And I sort of just wrapped the wire around the outside, and this was fine. It didn't affect the shape or the making of the crab at all, but I think it might have just been, you know, get double use out of it. If it was a stronger bit of wire, I could have maybe made it run all the way through the middle of it and use that to help shape the legs as well, and then put the tinfoil over that. So I think in the future that's sort of the technique that I'm going to be using. I then started work on the claws of the crab with the same method. I mean, this is just such a big thing to get right. You have to make sure that the claws of a crab are awesome, and the shape of the claws is just such a cool thing, and I'm actually genuinely surprised. I really think I nailed it from the clay point of view, and the paint that I add on later just adds to it. And then I had to go and like match it. The legs sort of all needed to be somewhat similar. There were so many legs, but there's so many that you sort of, if a few are slightly different, you're not going to notice. But the claws needed to somewhat match and be in the same sort of size. So that was a sculptural challenge, but I really enjoyed it. And I think, you know, maybe me staring at crabs my whole life has paid off when it comes to crab art. Like, what a weird CV brag. Have stared at crabs a lot. So if you ever need to make some form of anatomically somewhat there of a crab, I can do it. I'm putting these anchor points in, and this is where I'm going to attach the puppet, and you can sort of see that the clay has started to dry on this one, and I realised just in about enough time of where I wanted to put it that it hadn't started to dry yet, that if you want to sort of tilt any part of it, like if you wanted to move the body up and down, you needed two points on it rather than just one. So I managed to make sure I had that, which I think was really important in the body. It is day 492. So, hi everyone. Okay, so where we're at, it's been 6 days since I made my beautiful, gorgeous crab air clay thing, and I've been letting it dry. They are now, the many bits of the crab are now completely dry, which is awesome. They're lighter than I thought they would be. I think because like all the water goes out of them. That's the dry part. Like, they are actually lighter, and they're slightly like, it is definitely like dry, but they feel, and then squidgy is the wrong term, but they're just, maybe it's because that lighter feel is just like, they just feel not as like super solid as I thought they would be. Doesn't make any difference. That's just an observation. If you've never used air dry clay before, that's what I'm thinking. So if you're catching this video in order of the series, honestly, I can't remember what videos I'm putting out when. Basically, where I am at is it is Thursday, and I leave for London on Monday, and I have got the front of the theatre painted, the seaweed painted, and the clay crab thing made. I still need to get done the painting, glazing, creating of this sculpture, the set backdrop, a set mid-piece, a whole first act, which involves a whole different scenario, which I'm very excited about. I'm desperate to try and get it to work, but it's going to be an event, so stay tuned for that. And I need to practice, because when I go, I'm going down and I'm at a conference where I'm also hosting 4 sessions at this conference, and then I'll be performing on the actual big demo competition, and I'm running to be on the committee of this conference, so I'll also be going to the AGM of that. So I've got a really easy, chill time when I go down, so thanks, emails. Did you hear that email noise? It was like, I need to put my laptop on silent, because that's just like, oh, by the way, just to let you know, there's like other work you need to do as well. I'm staring at my laptop. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'm really looking forward to these 4 days. I love a deadline. We're going to run up to it anyway. Whatever, let's just go. So what I'm going to do today is these are pretty, like, I've put all these little hooks in. Now these are pretty solid. Like, it does hold the weight, but it stresses me out slightly, because I feel like once we paint and glaze it, it's gonna be so much harder if one of these hooks falls out to fix it, and it's got to survive a train travel trip down to London. I'm really nervous about these things. I don't know why I put them in. I debated not doing them, but they look so cool when I put them on. I'll bring what I have here with me just in case. Super glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and just put a little dab of super glue, try and get it into the little hole bit. At least then it's got a bit of extra support. And then we're going to gesso it again, just like the I gessoed the front of the theatre. It's a primer to make the paint stick better. What I loved about using gesso on the theatre thing was that it in my head, it really popped way more than even if like putting on normal paper. It just seemed that every time I put the colour down, it was like, whoa, that like hit you. And that's what I want. I'm not going to sand the crab because do I have time? No. But also I want this to look a bit like, I'm not going as stylised as maybe I would love to in a future thing. I have visions of doing, you know, that Tim Burton-esque, very like, not Tim Burton, that style exactly, but my version of like a very stylistic, gorgeous like world that you could go in this theatre. I want it to look like you're going into an underwater world, and I want it to be painted, and I kind of want you to know, like I want you to acknowledge that it's a clay puppet. I don't want you to be like, oh my god, it's a crab, because I want you to take joy in the art as well as joy in the animal and the creature and the story. Future Elizabeth popping in here. I have shorter hair, that's how you can tell I'm from the future, obviously. I just wanted to pop in and say that you really should watch what happens get to the end of this video, and then you'll see why in the next video after that as well, because I had some comments from and about the crab when it went and live. I've done 2 shows with the crab now, and that artistic vibe that I was getting led to a very comical outcome. So I will say about that at the end of the video, and then you can go and see for yourself when you see the final show if you agree. And this is now blurred. This is what the theatre, the lovely, beautiful theatre, which is now blurry to you, looks like. It will not be blurred at the end of this video when I explain and show the puppet. So if you haven't watched the video yet where I design the sets and design the theatre, go and watch those 2 first and then come back so that this isn't so spoiled for you. Okay, back to making the crab. And I think that sanding it and making it super smooth and like is just going to take away from that like handmade clay texture feel of it. Like let's lean into it. You know, that's the plan. We're going to get on with that. And hopefully the plan by the end of today is to have this puppet painted to dry, ready for tomorrow morning when I varnish it. It has 24 hours to dry after the varnish. I don't think we'll get a second coat on. Maybe I'll second coat it in the future. The crab has finished going from white to white. I really hope, I mean I haven't tested it without putting gesso on before, but I really hope this is going to help it pop. It's now bright white, which is really cool. I literally can't wait to paint this. I've been excited for this all week since I've made it. I was like, this is where it's going to really come to life. We unfortunately lost an antenna, and I'm really sad. And it's really frustrating because it's quite noticeable, and I have a feeling we'll lose the other one at some point too. But I feel like if I lost it just like painting it, then we were definitely going to lose it like in transportation. I might make a spare little like extension, or make a spare one of these each and pack them. That might be like a good thing to do. But right now I'm just going to focus on painting it and getting it done, and you know, if I have to make 2 little spare ones, then hopefully I can fit that in somewhere. But this would be really awesome and really, really cool. I just can't wait. Let's just get into it. Let's just get painted. The reason I am so excited to paint the crab, I mean, if you don't need an obvious reason, it's a crab, it's awesome. But they are, I think, my favourite thing to paint. That and sponges. But if I could just paint one thing for the rest of my life, I think it would be crabs. I have always just I've adored the shape of them. I think the shape of crabs is really cool. And I just love the colours. The shell of a crab is so littered in the best way, with so many different layers and dots and spots and wiggles of colour, and just having to like layer them on top of each other. I'm starting with this beautiful bright yellow, but I know that going on top of there is just going to be so much more. There's so many shades of oranges and greens and browns, and it all just sort of comes together in a way that isn't perfect. There's no sort of right way to paint a crab because they're so complicated and so irregular that you can really sort of have freedom and sort of stick to it. I adore painting crabs, and it's a good job I do because there was a lot to paint. These legs are so frustrating. That, you know what, the first time, so there's 6 segments to a crab's leg. So there's 8 crab's legs, 2 claws, and 6 segments on each of the legs. First time I made all the tinfoil for them, I only made enough for 4 legs. I thought I'd made, because I just kept making them, and I got to 4 thinking that was like a multiple of 8 or whatever it's called. I was like, oh no, I have to make this all again, and sort of then it hit me. This is just, every one of those segments had to be wired and tinfoiled and clayed and then gessoed and then painted, and I'm going layer by layer. So I've got like all of the yellow paint, and then it's all of the brown paint and all of the green paint and all of the orange paint, and then I had to varnish them. It took so long. I know they're only small, but that sort of also made it worse because I had to get around all the different sides of it and hold it and it not smudge, and it was a challenge, but I just so enjoyed seeing this crab come to life. That's what paint does. It really does, like, just bring stuff to life. This crab started to get personality, and whether that's just me spending hours upon hours thinking about this crab's life, even though it's not real, I felt like I was bringing it to life through this, and it was so fun. I am particularly pleased with how the claws came out. I really needed to nail the claws of the crab because obviously they're iconic. You can't do a crab an injustice with its claws. And so I spent a while making sure I sort of had that right, because part of it is the focus is going to be on this crab, but I also think that with when you're making something, you want to catch people's attention with this in a flash. Like, I want people to stay focused with it, but the first time I see it, I want people to be like, that is a crab. And nailing the claws is part of that, as well as the sort of overall shape of this. And we have to give this iconic crab its due, because there is actually a theory, like an actual biological theory, that is called carcinization. So that word, carcinization, means everything just wants to turn into a crab. That is the actual definition. Because in the crustacean, which is what a crab is, there has been so many times that a crustacean has turned into the shape of a crab. Even though they are sort of related on the crustacean front, but you could have gone off and been a lobster, or you could have gone off and been a prawn or a barnacle. But so many times with outside of the actual true crab, like the first crab started, and then later on other ones like, I need to be that shape. It has happened so many times that this theory that, like, it's just such a good body shape and it works so well for that environment that all of these different animals are just like, yeah, we're just going to get there on our own. They all came to the same conclusion, that this is the coolest and therefore we must be it. And so I can't do that in injustice. I've got to take the time to really nail this, because so many creatures in the ocean will know if I don't. some more crabs facts for you now, because why not? This is a slightly horrific fact. Not great. I don't really have to include it, but I'm going to, because the reason that there's lots of camouflage in crab shells, and particularly in baby crabs, there's lots and lots of dots and blending in to really be able to blend in with the sand, blend in with the environment. It helps them not get eaten by certain things. It helps them sneak around when they're going to hunt, all of that. However, one of the main reasons that camouflage is so important in baby crabs is because big adult crabs eat baby crabs, and there's no way for them to know if the crabs that they're eating are their own. So there's just a really big consensus in baby crabs to try and not get eaten, particularly by crabs. So they need to be extra. So as camouflaged as this adult crab is that I'm painting and looking at all this, the pictures of baby crabs there are so delicate and detailed and so blendy-inny, which is a proper term, that it's because they don't want to get eaten by many things, including their parents. If there is anything that I love in the art world, it is giving black outlines to things, which I can't do with this because it's a 3D crab. I could probably do it if I made it look like a cartoon, but I'm not. Although, actually, just looking at this video footage, I think I am putting on bits of black there. Must be dark brown. And then I love a white highlight. I think a white dots on things just absolutely make things pop and bring them out. And I don't know if you're supposed to use proper true white for it, but I love it. Those two things are my favorite things. I mean, most of the time I do all of the painting and all of the artwork just to get to the moment where I get to outline it in black and then put the white pops on, and it just is perfection. Not my painting, but the idea of the white dots. And I think it really helped lighten this shell up and give emphasis to it, and I love how it came out. I'm so happy. I couldn't be more pleased with how this came out. This is so cool. Now I know I've made it, it's my artwork that I'm saying is so awesome, but one of the great joys of having artwork is creating your own art is like creating stuff you've never seen before, or stuff that you would always wish for, and like, oh my goodness, I would never be able to resist like seeing, if I saw like a crab puppet in the wild, like, look, it's so cool. It genuinely looks like the top of a shell. They just have this gorgeous pattern, and I've seen probably thousands upon thousands of these gorgeous common shore crabs, and I just feel like that fed into it. Like, that to me was just like, oh my god, that's it. And all of these cool like different like the claws and that, and it just looks so painted. That's what I want. It just looks so artsy and gorgeous, as well as it being the sort of like actually the same sort of colours, but just like this just gorgeous artiness version of this like realistic sort of creature. Oh my goodness, I am so happy. So the next thing to do, which I'm like I'm desperate to get this as a puppet and just see if it'll work. But the next thing to do is to varnish it, which I've never varnished anything before. But put a varnish on. Hopefully this also will do 2 things. 3 things maybe. 1, it will protect it, which is great because this is going to be travelling and be out and about. 2, it's going to make it less shiny. So it's quite shiny right now, and this is a matte varnish. I don't know whether it'll make it less shiny than it is, but I want it to be matte so that it doesn't shine if I'm filming or I've got lights on it and that sort of thing. And the third thing that it might do is it might make it look nice. I've seen a few videos where it's like, oh, that looks real good when it's varnished, but I have seen it where it's like, it looks great after like 3 coats of varnish because it like smooths stuff out. I don't know, some sort of light, maybe physics involved, I don't know. We get 1 coat, so I'm gonna coat it. We are gonna crack on, and I'm gonna listen to some lovely D&D or music or an audiobook, and I'm gonna have a great afternoon and evening varnishing the crab. And then you will have already seen what I've worked on because I'll be dropping back to do the background and sets in watercolour, which will be in the previous video, so hopefully it's gone well. The varnishing was so satisfying. If you have watched, I've watched many a TikTok where people varnish oil paintings at the end and just make things pop, and it was very satisfying because it felt the same. That did sort of fade. I would have maybe put on like another coat, but I didn't have time. But I think it worked really well, both for it going matte and for protecting it. A couple of pointers, and I hope this is sort of helpful, even though this is the first time I'm doing it. I thought I'd share what I sort of noticed. Really helpful having, just by accident, I'd brought these silicone mats because my table underneath my desk is just absolutely coated in paint. So many bits of just like, it's an art desk, it's there to get messy, but when I'm filming stuff, I thought it might be nice to have a simpler background so you can focus on the thing that I'm actually painting. But just by chance, I'd brought them, and the varnish, when it sort of dried, I maybe should have had like a drying rack or something, but it dried on the silicone thing, and then it was really easy to peel off. However, the reason I really probably did need a drying rack is that where the varnish sort of pooled and on the mat where it was sort of sitting there, the one bit of contact it had, I tried to prop them all up so that they were having the least amount of contact with the surface while they dried as possible, sort of resting them on the wire where I could. The varnish on the actual puppet like turned like a grey, like not clear, like a cloudy grey. And so in some cases I sort of had to peel it off and repaint it, or just peel it off and leave that bit unvarnished, and then that also sort of started to peel off the paint in some areas, so I got like a Posca pen and tried to cover it up again. So just as a thing, I think I've never really invested in a drying rack for anything. I usually just put my art in certain locations that hopefully I won't touch before it dries and left it. But I do think with this, that would be a worthwhile investment for future, is having a way to dry all of these items without them touching anything. Would have been really handy. I was really worried at this point because I thought laying out this puppet, it looked real weird. I was like, oh no, is the claws too long? I was so worried. And then I started to assemble it, and it, apart from a few areas where I hadn't left enough wire, and then I said about the wire breaking like later on, one of which was right before one of my shows, which I'll say about later, but it really came together really well. The rings in the crab all held. I think the super glue worked really good for that. The fact that then all the paint and varnish are sort of on top of that was really helpful. And then using the little bits of wire to connect all of the legs together was really good. The good thing about the wire being so thin is that it is flexible. It does sort of leave room for movement, but I think that the actual like flexibleness of it is helpful in connecting them. There is one more thing I will say about how I made it and how I would change it, but I'm going to save that for the next section, which I'm about to jump to, because I need to swap to future Elizabeth in person to explain to you the chaos that ensued in getting this puppet to actually be a working puppet in this thing. I'll explain it now. I genuinely think it's giving the ick slightly that I am so in love with this, but I cannot get over how good I think this looks. I've also got, which I haven't shown, I haven't shown you in the previous video from the set. This is future me. I've done this show a couple of times now, so I've sort of tweaked with a few things, and I have little miniature spotlights that go in the theatre, and I think it makes it look like they're underwater. I love it so much. I think this has come out so good. But you're not here to see what the theatre looks like. You're here to see what happened to the puppet. Now the puppet does exist. The puppet has been used. The puppet has been overly successful, I think. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But I do want to explain why there isn't a video of past self with the puppet. Actually making a puppet is very difficult, and I sort of knew that from the start, but I got duped into the fact that the crab making and the painting was going so well that I was like, hey, this is going to be great. Actually making the physical puppet with the legs and the crabs did not go well many times. So let me walk you through that process. I started off by cutting bits of cardboard up to be the puppet sticks, oh goodness, I don't know, of the puppet. I'd watched some YouTube videos of like amazing French marionette makers where you want to be able to possibly change the length of a puppet, which I actually found out is useful. Like, for example, if I wanted to take the crab walking along the floor, I could make the strings really long, and you wouldn't have to keep restringing it every time I wanted to do that. I was like, this makes total sense. So I got these really long strings, and the way that you would do it is by having like 2 notches on either side of the bit of cardboard, so you could like wrap all the string that you would have for the maximum length you would need on the puppet. Sort of kept there a bit like a fishing reel, and then you could adjust the height. But the actual nightmare of making that the actual length that it is was just I was so tight for time, and I just couldn't get it. I kept stringing it, but then if the one string was wrong, you'd have to unwind it all, readjust it, and it kept slipping. I could not get the fishing line and the cardboard, and I think maybe that's where I was going wrong. I think the proper fancy made ones have got beautiful wooden notches and that are very strong and won't move, and it kept slipping. And I made the puppet to check that it would work. 3 or 4 times I tried to string this puppet up before I left, thinking I have to get this now. It has taken me so long to do. I set up really late. I was leaving for London the next day. Like, that is how tight for time I'd left this. And I was like, I bundled up the puppet as carefully as possible. I put it in my suitcase, and by the time I got to London the other end, it had just completely disintegrated again. And I was like, oh no, this is a nightmare. Luckily in London there's lots of lovely art shops. I went and got some thin, lightweight, this is the problem with this one, thin, lightweight wooden like dowels that were I don't know what the wood is, it's a balsa wood where it's just like super light, because I thought, I don't have the tools here, I don't have the stuff to cut and trim and mini saw. I literally just didn't have time, and I had to make it, and I was at the conference trying to work all this out. So I thought balsa wood, you could literally scratch that with your nails or a bit of a ruler or some scissors. I could make little notches. Worked much better until I just need a moment as I'm remembering this. You'll see in the video, and I have the recording of the performance. Luckily it wasn't during the performance, but about 30 seconds, I think, before I went on stage, I was holding the puppet, and it snapped. It completely broke at the point I was holding it. So at the worst possible place, this puppet just disintegrated. And I'm going to just give a little picture. It bugs me so much because I've got this beautiful recording of the performance, and I hold it up, and just the top of the puppet is just an absolute mess of gaffer tape and wood. And I'm trying desperately to hold this together as it's like falling apart in my fingers. So that was that version. I would now, drum roll, would like to show you and announce and show you the final puppet, the actual puppet that I have used and I'm going to stick with for a while because it hasn't yet catastrophically broke as quickly as the others. Crab! Oh my goodness! I am so happy with this amazing, amazing crabby. A couple of things that I think has worked way better. It's still definitely not a completely solid creation as my fiddling there was showing, but it has worked so much better. And a couple of reasons why. The wood that I got is now like proper pieces of wood, so they're strong, and then hopefully, unless I have like I'm really scared or something, I'm not going to break it by grabbing them. I then painted them black because I had black tape, and I think black is just way better to hide any sort of mistakes or anything. So if it did break and I had to gaffer tape it up with black gaffer tape, which is like the most common form, you wouldn't be able to see it. The way that I'd have done the strings has also changed, which is just like revolutionary. That tying around the long thing and the slipping, that's not going to work. The amount of times that I need the crab to be able to like walk on the floor like at a different length, I can restring the puppet 100 times quicker than the multiple restrings or slipping of what happened. So what I did, which is so much quicker, I can now restring this puppet in about 5 to 10 minutes. It's just tie a loop at the top at the length that I needed, and it's tied to the bottom so that there's no changing. And then these loops go over the top of the bits of wood, and they just got a bit of black tape, which is not gaffer tape, so it can but strong enough to hold the string, which doesn't need that much strength. At the positions that I want it. So if I end up wanting to move the legs or move different things as I go, I can just untape it, move the string about, and then sort of get on. And that's also really helpful because there has been some sort of like I can just notice now that I've restrung it up slightly wrong, but I can move the strings when they get tangled. I can just untie it here, untangle them, because every time it travels it gets tangled. And the way that I've done it, which is actually, I've just realised I've not redone it properly, is that I've got a bar at the top here which moves the claws, these sort of move the legs, so I can move the body and I can sort of move the legs slightly separately. That gives it this really awesome movement of a crab, which of course loves a bit of side to side movement. Okay, fabulous. I don't think you can quite see that I've just put a boom arm up so that I can talk about the crab puppet a bit more without having to hold it up all the time. I need to work on my crab holding arms, but mainly just because I like to talk like this and wiggle my hands around a lot. So this is the thing that I wanted to point out about before I show you the performances. So the next video, or there's going to be two, be 2 videos because that actually ended up being a second performance, which is very exciting. Before we get into talking about that, before you go and see that in the next video, the the reason I wanted to talk about this crap is because in those 2 performances, this has happened twice, and people have been genuinely convinced and concerned. Now I know, in fact, I strive for the vibe on the internet and in real life. There is no changing this persona that I'm weird. I get that. I admire that. It is my absolute goal. That is the biggest compliment you can give me. But it might have led people to think that I would string up a dead crab and use that as a puppet. I'm being serious. So, when I went to go and do the performance and I got to talking to people afterwards, I had either one of 2 comments. I did not have at any point a comment about, oh, you made the puppet. I either got, which is actually the lesser of the 2 comments, where did you get the crab toy? They thought it was like a plastic model of a crab, which that's a pretty good compliment, I suppose. Or they thought I had brought in a dead crab or a shell of a crab, strung it up and done the performance. Which, that people would think that I would do that. It's a bold move. It's a memorable move. And that people just immediately questioned that is something that I need to sit and think about in my own time. But also it just goes to show, like, I was going for this artsy crab vibe. I wanted this crab to be a bold, colourful celebration of crabs. I wanted it to look like a crab, but I didn't need it to be specifically like a photocopy, replica, a realistic crab. Because I want this whole scene, I think this scene looks amazing. I think this looks just like a rock pool, but it looks like the illustrated version of a rock pool because it's sort of a celebration amalgamation of it all. Which I think that people then immediately thought that this was real. It's not a brag on how I've made the crab puppet. It is, in fact, more of a reflection on how awesome I think people think that crabs are. How colourful and cool and bold and brilliant, and how just awe-capturing they are, because I was trying to make this crab to be sort of an awe-inspiring, like, whoa, that's so cool. And the reaction was, whoa, that's so cool, but it's a dead crab. Like, there's been a bit of mix-up there, but I think that just goes to show, like, how cool. Like, if you see something that is a cool piece of crab art and you're like, yeah, that's a crab. Crabs aren't that cool. Like, I'm going to think of it that way around, versus you've made a dead crab and put it on the stage. The second performance had the same comment. Someone, and I won't say too much about that, but I had a chance to sort of do some previews before that performance, and someone came up to me very concerned and was just like, yeah, you might need to put that into your performance. It's not real, and we're a bit freaked out by it. And so I did. It ended up in the script that I had to mention that it was made. And I got, like, from memory, like, that got a bit of like, oh, like, from the crowd. So I'm pretty sure that crowd too was like, yeah, I don't know this person. This is a public audience. I've never seen this person perform before at all. But yeah, she seems like the sort of person that would string up a dead crab. And I'm here for it. In fact, I've paid to see it. Just like, science communication is my favourite thing. This job is my favourite. I can't believe I get to do this. But it leads to some odd conversations. So the last thing I want to say about the crab is another thing that I might slightly change. You can sort of see here that the legs aren't hanging amazing. It looks better. You can sort of get over that with some movement. But the way I sort of put the holds in on the legs to hang them, I only put one holding spot. And because I put the holding spot on the last bit of the leg, I sort of assumed that I'd be able to force that last bit of the leg out this way. And yet again, physics thwarts me. Unbelievable. So what I would have done is I would have maybe had like another hinge, like little, I would have built into the clay another little hook and sort of had it coming up just to pull that leg up a little bit more. I still might be able to do that. Maybe it's just a case of like super gluing something on there, like a little metal hook thing, but I don't really want to mess with the puppet too much. I feel like that could just completely sort of destroy it. So I'm erring on the side of caution and not doing it yet. But yeah, this is my awesome crab. Now I don't have a name for a crab. And so what I thought is I'd put it out to all of you. If you would like to suggestions for the names of crabs, I'm also putting out a suggestion on social media. I will give you bonus points if you give me crab facts too. Like, I know I'm the person that's supposed to be the science communicator sharing crab facts, but I want to learn some cool facts too. So if you can find a really cool crab fact and add that to the comments and add the name, that would be great, and I will look through them. So thank you for watching this video. The next one will be the performance. You will get to see how it goes, and there's another chance with another performance. There's 2 versions of what I'm creating that you will be able to see out there. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for following along. If you'd like to help support me on my channel, I do have a Patreon. That's just really helpful. There's sort of a tier where you can sign up and just sort of support me, and then higher up tiers you get some exclusive content as well. It takes a lot of time and some investment to put into making stuff like this, so I really appreciate any support that you can give me. And this is just going to be the start. This is just the first of many stories. The beauty of theatres is that they are homes to so many stories, and so I'm going to be just hopefully using this to create and test and try and play and share about our oceans in the most creative ways. Oh my goodness, I'm a poet. I should just, scripts write themselves. Okay everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video, or you will definitely see me performing. Oh, I've already watched it back in the edit. It's good, but like, it's very cringy to watch yourself perform. Bye.